Okay, I just want to run over ground rules for the talk. So this is kind of a modified fishbowl. So the inner circle, if you would like to sit there, will be for people who would like to come to the table to ask questions, or other people who were on drifts who would like to share as we start the dialogue. And then just the outer circle is more for spectators, people who want to observe. But maybe we can start with introductions. You want to start, Anaya?
Hi, I'm Anaya Butler from PMI and from Cradle, and I'm sure you all have seen me like bouncing around this entire time. Yeah.
Okay, I'll share my mic with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Julie Shao. I'm the Public Art and Program Manager at Big Car, and I helped organize and kind of facilitate the Southern Ohio Drift.
I am Yashi Davalos. I'm the curatorial fellow here at Charlotte Street. I also run some of our grant admin as well. And I went, I think, on 3 or 4 drifts. So I'm a drift expert. That's what I have to bring to the table today. All right.
My name is Philip Matthews. I'm the project director at Worm Farm Institute in rural Sauk County, Wisconsin. With Claire Gatto of Bulk Space, I co-organized the Ohio Drift to Cleveland as well as Kent. And I'll also mention that Worm Farm for years has collaborated with the Rural Urban Flow Network, which is a network that organizes exchanges in between rural and urban Wisconsin, as well as now in Minnesota and Illinois, so bringing a bit of that perspective to this conversation as well.
So, for those of us who are already sitting at the table, if specifically to the, well, everyone except for me actually organized a drift. I just attended. But maybe we could go around the table and talk about how the drift that each one of you organized was specific, like the spaces that we visited with and the itinerary that you built, how it was specific to engaging with that ecosystem or the project spaces in that landscape. If you could just go over where you visited and how each space was different and congruent to the place. You want to start, Julie? Yeah.
I can start. Yeah, so when I got, I guess I was kind of put on this drift assignment. So we decided to do, we were going to do Southern Ohio and Kentucky, but then like the organization Apple Shop that we were wanting to drift to had a 1,000-year flood the year before. So they're like, no. So we ended up just going to Southern Ohio. And I originally reached out to Wave Pool first because Jim and Shantae suggested I reach out to them because they visited that space before and it seems like they were very connected with the Cincinnati art scene and the community there. So I reached out to them and asked if they had any suggestions to, artist-run spaces and places that we should visit, see, and talk to. They also gave us like a bunch of contact info too, so that was really helpful. So yeah, we also asked them to host dinner since we wanted to see their space and get involved with that community. And so after that, I reached out to different spaces like Blue House over here, and emailed them, asked like if, because a lot of spaces have certain hours that you can visit or by request, weren't always open. So those spaces I had to like check, make sure what the hours were and request that time and make like a schedule with those time slots. Like we had to be there at like 1:30 Tuesday, or no, yeah, it was just on the weekend too, Friday through Sunday. So I did that and then made like a full schedule for like when people arrive, what time we got to be at certain places, kind of block that out. And then I think honestly the hardest part was probably like trying to figure out who was coming on my drift because everyone's schedules are changing. So like I'll check 1 month like or 1 week like okay, these 10 people are coming, and then like 2 weeks later I was like okay, it's getting close, and then some people change slots. So I was like, so yeah, kind of managing that. And then what I did was the everyone would arrive probably on Thursday was what I did, to Big Car in the evening, because some were driving, some were flying. So I just wanted to make sure we were well rested after that travel before driving again the next day. So everyone just came to Big Car, and luckily we had our short-term residency space open, so that was available for people to stay. And that's just like right on the Tube campus. So we all had dinner, met each other. Some people met like some of the APLR, which is the long-term residency artists. And then the next day, bright and early, we had breakfast and then just went straight to Ohio. So we went to Dayton, Ohio, visited Blue House Gallery, and then visited some other sites in Dayton. And then we drove like a couple hours. Oh, it's only an hour from Cincinnati. So then we drove an hour to Cincinnati. And then we didn't do too much there. And then we had dinner. And then Saturday was like a full packed schedule, like from morning to late evening. We were just going to different spaces. And then I think that was the day we also had the dinner hosted by Wavepool too. And then Sunday, it was just a couple more spaces, and then everyone until like 12:30ish or 1, and then we all kind of departed. I left some wiggle room on like Saturday and Sunday for us to kind of be able to rest for a little bit and also visit some other spaces if things pop up too. I think like Paris Project was one space that we didn't expect to visit, but it just popped up and we're like, sure, let's go. So yeah.
Thank you, Julie. So Julie planned a big drift, or just like a standard drift, which usually takes you to a multitude of spaces over a couple of days. I planned a mini drift, which was actually kind of an audible by the time that we went on it because a couple people were slated to go, but because it's such a, I wouldn't say like a logistical nightmare. It's not really a logistical nightmare, but it is just a lot of coordinating people's schedules when people are like operating on different programming timelines. They're operating on different grant timelines. Like you have to get a lot of people in order to just meet at this one place at the same time. So by the time we went to the Peoria Drift, it was just me, you, and my partner Chris, because drifts aren't necessarily, I think the ones we took were more research trips because at the time we were looking for partner orgs to join Midway, or we were looking for editors for our atlas. The Peoria Drift actually came about because we were looking for an editor for Illinois, but I had found the Peoria Guild of Black Artists and I didn't know that was a thing in like the middle of central Illinois. And I was just really excited to go do it. And Nick encouraged me to just, we were trying to expand the Midway network. So he was like, I would like for you to just take a trip down there, even if it's just for, I think we only stayed for like 2 days. Like it was a really quick turnaround. We met up with the Pagoba people. They held a really nice conference, or not conference, they held a really nice just like dinner for us where we got to get to know a couple of the local artists. I planned our drift around their First Fridays because there weren't a lot of spaces that you could like just visit in Peoria based on my research. It was a lot of like appointment only, and I just wanted to go on a day where we would just have the ability to like bop around from place to place because we really wouldn't even have enough time to schedule appointments and go see people. But that's the drift that I planned.
I'm gonna pass it over to you here in a second, but I just want to talk a little bit about the value that's created from the drifts. So like when we were in Cincinnati, we visited PAR projects, Basket Shop. We even visited some of their contemporary spaces. They have a CAC there. And we did do like one little pit stop in Covington, Kentucky. But I think something that was really interesting about Cincinnati to me was just kind of like this reclamation of like spaces that were being repurposed. PAR specifically has been pretty much redesigned from the ground up, but part of it used to be like a mechanic shop to fix cars, but now is like a full-on like design firm slash gallery slash residency. So it has all these different components to it, where Waypool also kind of has a similar setup. It was like a decommissioned firehouse. So really thinking a lot about like the site specific, the word's not gonna come out, but in in Cincinnati. And then also thinking about how we were recruiting for writers too. So we did have an Atlas editor in Central Illinois. But yeah, I think it's really interesting, like learning the capacity of each space and how they're a different function of the ecosystem. I think Basket Shop was not someone that became a partner, but they had this really intensive archive of like conferences between project spaces from like the early to mid 2000s, and they're just all in this like small, like some of our smaller studio spaces were bigger than that room, and it was just like 10 years of history just chilling and stacked on top of each other. And like that's a place where like a lot of BFA students will do like their senior show. So in some ways it's like the front of it is so inconspicuous because it's just like a solo show. But then when you go back into the building, it's kind of like a shotgun, and there's like a little library and then another studio. So like seeing how, also too, I don't know, the spaces in Cincinnati are either really, really vertical or really, really horizontal. Like when we were in PAR, it was like the space, like doors kept opening. We were like, where's the end of this building? And then there were just like some houses, like the swing house that we went to, that was like it was a decommissioned unit, I guess, like a home, and they bought it back in the day for like $3,000 and like turned it into an Airbnb that has like this swing and then a gallery at the bottom. And then the house next to it, they did the house of like all stairs. But just like really learning like some of the architectural gems in Cincinnati was really cute, but how that translated over into project spaces is really interesting. But then like in Peoria, I think it was really interesting to see like how activism oriented everyone was. And so, so much of organizing this drifts is really like learning the ecosystem. But I want to like pull it over to you now, because I think you have a little more of a discourse between like the urban and the rural and how you organize your drift. So if you'd like to share.
Yeah, I'll speak first specifically to the Ohio drift. So again, I worked with Claire Gatto of Bulk Space, and Claire was very smart in making an initial connection with Sarah Liska, who was the former director of the Front Triennial and had her own network of artist and artist spaces in the Cleveland area. And we really took a cue from Sarah about who we should visit. And so on the initial, it was a long weekend in January, complete with snowstorm and all. So we actually, 9 of us met in Detroit first. Bulk Space was celebrating the release of a book of one of their artists. And so we met initially in Detroit and had a night just settling in, going to the poetry reading, sort of connecting with each other. And then in the morning, before we road tripped to Cleveland, we met, for pastries to get on the same page. Drove through literally a terrible snowstorm. So unexpectedly, there was this bonding experience. But also, for me, it really solidified the desire to do this. It's like, forget the weather. We're going anyway. We're going mindfully. We're going safely. But we are going to honor the people who had, agreed to host us and agreed to meet us. There is a good bit of logistics, to Anaya's point, to getting, schedules coordinated not only with the drifters, but also to the driftees. And so we spent all of that, a Friday, driving, and Carmen Lane was so gracious in welcoming us to their space in the Buckeye Shaker neighborhood of Cleveland at a Tinsic. Carmen had organized a group of other artists, community organizers, friends, movers and shakers in the Cleveland area to join us for dinner. Carmen had connected with a Puerto Rican chef to provide a really delicious meal for us all, and it was just the relief of getting out of this stressful transportation experience and just being welcomed into that kind of hospitable space where so much care had been put into the food, into the guest list, you could feel sort of the energy of this space that doubles as a home and as a creative incubator. It was just really beautiful. The next day, the 9 of us actually split into 2 teams because we realized that there were so many appointments that we had scheduled for that Saturday that instead of saying we're going to rush around all over the city of Cleveland and cut our time short for conversation with the people who had made time for us, we actually were going to extend and be more gracious with ourselves and also with the people that we met with. So the first group went to visit Antoine Washington, artist-run space and youth education space called the Museum of Creative Human Art. And then they went to meet with Anna Young, who's a curator at Kink Contemporary Art Gallery. The second group that I was a part of, we started our day with Shed Projects. That's a space, also a home, that's run by Gabrielle Banzoff and John Gott. They're New Orleans transplants who have relocated to Cleveland with their family. Yeah, they've bought a historic home and are restoring it in a really mindful way that that sort of honors the lineage of the home, and they are asking various artists to come in and do temporary galleries that really interact with the history and the architecture of the home. And then we actually drove into Kent, where Kent State University is located, to meet with Kelly Dietrich at Tropus Projects, a storefront gallery that she's curating there. Came back to Cleveland, regrouped with each other, had a dinner out, and then we met with Sarah Liska the following morning for breakfast, who had connected to all of partners and sort of just getting her sort of zoomed out perspective on the arts ecosystem and practice of Cleveland.
I want to, at this time, ask Nicholas if they would be willing to join to talk about Blue House. Yeah, just talk about your space and how it's specific to the ecosystem in Dayton, Ohio, and then like what your interaction was with all of our drifties that were on the Ohio Drift and us passing through your space.
Blue House, we started about 10 years ago. It was an abandoned house in northwest Dayton, Ohio. Our first goal, I think, was to kind of just increase the amount of conversation around the arts in Dayton. And then over the years, we've kind of transformed into more like kind of helping artists, like by paying them to make work and supporting them in that way. Our gallery's shrunk down quite a bit. It's just a little corner of our house now. But yeah, we work within our community. We work with like the Dayton Anti-Racist Network, the Dayton Urban Writing Center, just on like all kinds of different community projects and things like that. But yeah, overall, how we fit in, we're kind of the little gallery that's bringing in like all kinds of artists from all over the country, like the larger institutions aren't super into that. They're much more about supporting local artists, which makes a lot of sense, but we try to like create a more diverse arts culture for Dayton, Ohio. So we did write a grant in 2021, I think, where we put together an artist-run symposium called Futures through artistrunSpaces.org. And we brought in all kinds of different artist-run spaces because Dayton has like a few giant like warehouses that are just full of like different really small galleries and little artist-run projects. And we thought, well, we can write this grant and we can like support them, and we can also kind of get them exposed to this thing that's happening nationally with artist-run spaces. So I can't remember every name that we brought out. I believe it was like Tiger Strikes Asteroid. I know, Alex was like our keynote speaker. But yeah, we also had Carmen was part of that as well. The Neon Heater, like all kinds of places. I think we had places from Tampa to New York to LA, all over the place, coming into Dayton, Ohio, and kind of interacting with our artist-run spaces. So.
I'll ask you one more question and then I'll let you go. But I'm curious to talk, thank you, Julie. I'm curious to talk a little bit about how like something being small scale is actually still like hyper functional. And so I wanted to know a little bit about like your residency program, if you could share, and then also like how it's funded in response to like the funding landscape in Dayton, because I know that there is like state funding, but then a lot of things are also going through like the university. Yeah, you mind sharing?
Yeah, I guess our funding system is super weird. We do have support from the county for a lot of our projects. We also work with other partner organizations such as like Photo Focus based in Cincinnati, which is it's a biennial. I think when we shrank down initially, like the whole idea was like instead of programming like 10 shows a year in our like 450 square foot gallery that's in the front of the house, we shrank it down to like a 200 square foot gallery in the corner of the house, and only program about 4 exhibitions a year. But we're able to provide a lot more support for the artists, able to like provide travel, all kinds of things to bring people in. And kind of create like a more exciting environment. My personal position, I'm also the galleries director at the University of Dayton, so I can leverage both the institutional stuff, like oh, we want to have a show, but we're going to program it with a Blue House event, so I have like the university money as well as Blue House money, and I can kind of combine it together and get folks out of the university bubble and get them exposure to more better art. So, does that answer everything? I didn't expect to be up here.
Sorry, you were one of our favorite stops.
Oh, thank you.
Yashi was like gushing about it the entire time. I guess
Was it the horses?
It likes the horses. I think I just really found the gallery space extremely charming. Like I love things that are small but significant. I think in a lot of ways like nonprofits, mid to large scale are so amorphous and they're extremely stressful to navigate at times as an artist or also as an administrator working for them. So I really do look to a lot of project space models to say like, what is the niche that you're focusing on and how is it actually impacting? Like I need to see directly how it's working. And I just thought it was so charming that someone who does understand the university setting, but then the both of you also understand like grant writing to scale, are able to do so much with your home ethically, whereas like most people who just decide to do something in their home are like, hey, come put some work up, but you've saw that through. So I think that's what was the most charming about it for me. Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess to piggyback on that, I was gonna say that essentially what you just said, Yashi. I think that the drifts offered a really good chance to, like we've already said multiple times, explore these arts ecosystems that you may not be accustomed to. These aren't your states. This isn't where you're coming from. I think when we went to go see you all, we were on our way out and I like pulled you to the side because I had been doing a lot of research about apartment galleries and like just alternative spaces, because as we were going through Ohio, I just kept seeing like all these storefronts and buildings that were like ripe for me to turn into some kind of art space. And I think you and your partner gave me some really good insights that I don't actually think I would have had if I hadn't have gone on the drift and actually gotten a chance to see how you operate the Blue House Gallery. It was like really impactful. Like I took some very good notes, so thank you.
Also have a publication archive, which I really love too. It's like we were able to see just how much that 200 square foot had feet had transformed from the shows that were in there. So yeah, I really appreciated that. Nicholas Arnold from Dayton, Ohio, everyone from the Gem City. Oh yeah, I was gonna ask if any of us at the table had any specific space that we adorned, and maybe we could talk a little bit about why.
So I would say, again, talking about Peoria, in Peoria, they have a lot of, because Peoria is so small, I learned from the brief time that we actually spent and from my just research about Peoria and its art scene. A lot of the arts is like centralized in Peoria. So it's like, and that's like a lot of places, but it's almost like hyper local. And there's this like nucleus at this place called the Sunbeam Building. And nearly everything that happens in Peoria happens within like a couple minutes of the Sunbeam Building. There are like large organizations or institutions that are trying to make their way over to the Sunbeam Building or around the Sunbeam Building because that's where everybody is like coming. But when you actually get there, it's just like this, it's basically just like one really long hallway, but they have broken it into all these little affordable art studios. Like when I got a chance to talk to everybody, I did go around and talk to everybody that was present in the Sunbeam at the time because I really did just want to find out more about Peoria. I wanted to use this drift. I kind of used the drifts as an opportunity to like see what other possibilities there are for me as an arts organizer. There aren't, I would say like I struggle with finding like, you know, this is a thing I think I've heard other people say too. A lot of times finding work in this field, it's not very centralized. So I think that one of the very valuable things about going on a drift is being able to explore these new opportunities that you could possibly have. And going to the Sunbeam Building, I learned that like a studio was $250 a month for like a pretty decent sized studio. And I was telling, I think it was LaShonda, when we were in Cincinnati about how much I enjoyed Peoria. And I was like, I would love to go back down there and like get a studio in the Sunbeam. And LaShonda was like, girl, I don't understand, but it was a perfect opportunity for the kind of artist I was at that time. And so it really just stuck in my mind.
I think that's something that I've been thinking more and more about, this idea of like opportunity for continued exchange and repeated trip. I wanted to share a little bit about this other collaborative that I participate in called Rural Urban Flow, which has been a growing network for several years now. Essentially, it's a group of creators and producers throughout Southwest Wisconsin and further afield who drift or flow to each other's places for cross-cultural exchanges. It started really with a group of artists and community organizers coming to visit Worm Farm's Farm Art Detour program in 2016, I believe. Actually, no, I think even earlier, maybe 2015. And then in the following year, a group of Sauk County artists and chefs and food producers and farmers drifted to Milwaukee. And that started this sort of initiative of going back and forth along this continuum. And along the way, of course, they're bringing gifts from each other's neighborhoods or each other's farms. They're finding connections in their creative practices and in their agricultural and cultural practices. And real friendships began to be cultivated. And now, you know, this is a network that's really multifaceted and nuanced. Sometimes the entire Flow network will do things together, but also there are artists who have developed these friendships who decide on their own we're going to do an exchange. And it's really about welcoming each other into each other's places and trying to disrupt this idea that rural and urban neighbors have nothing in common. That's particularly important now, given the political reality of the Midwest, that those geographic divisions or even perceptions of divisions are starting to have a really toxic effect on our civic health. And so opportunities to be welcomed into a space, to say, actually, yes, you do belong here. You belong here because I say that you do. Welcome to my home. Welcome to my studio. Welcome to my practice, I think are so important. So one of the things that I would love to see for the Midway drifts is to go back, to retrace our steps, and to, continue to expand the network, yes, but also continue to deepen those threads of the constellation that have already been traced out.
I wanted to share a little bit about the Kansas drift that we did. Before I say that, if there's anyone who went on a drift who wants to share about the drift, please come to the inner circle. You don't have to, but please do if you feel gratuitous. But yeah, I want to say like the thing that I found the most valuable about the Kansas drift. So we went to Matfield Green and we went to Lucas, and one of the organizations that's in Matfield Green is now a partner of ours, is a School for Rural Culture. But it's also in this idea of being introduced to people's, hi, welcome. All right, having this opportunity to like be exposed to how people in, or artist organizers in rural areas are actually co-sharing all of their spaces and their resources, and like having that specifically affiliated with the Tallgrass residency, seeing how like programming came in cycles, how you have to drive 45 minutes to a grocery store, but when it came time for us to do the drift, it was so full. There were so many people, and I specifically remember the dinner that we had at the School for Rural Culture because it was in like this 90s decommissioned like school where there was like still green chalkboards, and it was just very whimsical in some ways. But I'm really interested in this idea of repurposing space, and like and just this idea of like when you are in rural spaces, you really do see how art organizations are people first, not just spaces and resources. Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about the School for Rural Culture and maybe the Kansas drift since you're here?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for that, by the way, and thanks for coming. I mean, even just, I'll say I feel a little bit overwhelmed even being here and being, as part of the School for Rural Culture, as being a partner of Midway, sort of, it's just kind of really an interesting thing of you all coming on this drift, and just for us is sort of, and I think as rural folk we do get sort of insular, and it's not really necessarily by design. It's because we're just like we are a long ways away from other things, and we're often just kind of in a different. Some of the same things don't apply, and we're really busy in what we're doing, and we are making our focus the local area, and so I didn't even we didn't know what Midway was when they came through, and then when but we did. I'm pleased to hear that you felt the hospitality and the connection, because I think that is something that we do value. So whoever's coming through, we don't know who you are, but we want you to experience our community and make a connection. And then after that, I didn't really expect to hear from y'all again. And then it's sort of like, out of the blue, and it's like, well, would you like to participate in this, in a deeper way? And so that was, it was just really kind of an interesting, a narrative I'm still sort of working through myself on what this means, and what is our, relationship to this larger network of arts organizations, and what does that mean, and what does, and sometimes it can be even, I can, not necessarily cynical, but a little frustrated of sort of just how important are these connections? How do I bring this back to my community? How do I make these things apply? I think that the people, at the people level, felt like I was connecting with, we were connecting, and our community was connecting with a lot of the folks who were coming on the drift, but then it's hard to kind of translate that experience into what that means for our day-to-day experience and what we're trying to do in our community. Yeah.
I realize you didn't no one introduced you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Matthew Regier, and my wife and I started the School for Rural Culture and Creativity 5 years ago, and we've lived in this place, Matfield Green, for 10 years, 50 people out 2.5 hours west of here in the Prairie, and in a county that's less than 3,000 people, and to, I think, Philip's earlier point as I just was coming in, we also live in a county that voted 75% for Trump here recently. So taking that kind of political climate into account, we're not going to, in our situation, be doing what a lot of people would think of as activism. It's not going to make a lot of sense for me to do sort of wear a t-shirt that says something or do a various patch or something. It's only going to alienate myself more from the community around me. So it's kind of, what can we do very slowly to put down roots in our community that eventually, hopefully, will not necessarily, turn our county blue, but will create a kind of cultural resource there that other people, maybe after our time, can utilize and build on and create a culture that, and it's not that also, I would say the people around us aren't bad people by and large, and they're not, there hasn't been other voices, there hasn't been, and I grew up in a kind of, we were talking about this recently at the Landon Place conversation here recently, but, people, especially with a certain skill set or a level of education, tend to leave these places, and so you lose education, you lose those cultural resources, you lose people, you lose businesses, you lose schools. It's just loss, and then what's left in your community, it can kind of turn hard and sort of suspicious and rigid, and so it takes a long time to reverse or try to rebuild some of that back. Hello to Alexa Dawson, who's a kind of neighbor and nearby in our area, so welcome.
Sorry, I'm going to literally pass it right back. But I just wanted to ask you really quickly, what are some things through this newfound partnership that you think could be a way to provide new programming initiatives, or just now that you are a partner of Midway, what are some things that you would like to see in the future come out of the partnership?
I don't know if I'd really thought about that explicitly. It's definitely a good question to think about. I think I'm feeling a little bit more overwhelmed the first couple days here, and I feel like having a little bit of conversation that we had at the Landon Place conversation here with Manuman and Worm Farm, and then some others. I don't want to feel siloed as the rural group, but that's what I didn't want coming into this. And then when I got here, I kind of felt like I'm so rural. I'm I don't know. It's just I'm not connecting with some of these conversations, even though they make sense to me, but I'm not sure really how to apply them. So I think there's just maybe a lot of work to do still in having deeper conversations between rural and urban spaces that are, that don't just happen right away in an event or so yeah, building those connections over time. And well, yeah, you were just talking about maybe retracing the steps of the drifts, and so one encounter is interesting and kind of invigorating for a little while, but then it's sort of, it fades and feels like it's a lot of work to get ready for the next one. So again, I guess it's being a little bit introverted myself, and rural places being kind of introverted. So it's sort of, how do you invest in those long-term relationships and connections? That's what I'm thinking of right now.
I guess to speak to that, I was going to say I guess Central Illinois is kind of rural. To Philip's point about, revisiting these connections, if I could speak to something that I would love to happen for you all, is I would love for the Midway Network to be able to give you all the resources to explore even further, to just go a little further out and see what kind of rural connections you can make and bring back to the larger group, because I don't want you to feel siloed either into just being you or Manuman, into just being the rural folks in the room. And one of the goals of the drifts is to revisit these trips later, to make these initial trips into rural landscapes and go from there and kind of spread out so that we can bring more rural people into the fold, because you have your own unique ecosystem. You have your own unique way that you can implement a lot of these programming strategies, and a lot of the things that many of us here probably do regularly, but like you said, you may not have the opportunity or the freedom to operate in the same way that we do, living in blue states.
I do think that there's something, I was having a conversation with the manager of my building, of my apartment building, and it was election day, and we were have you voted, etc. And she was saying, I'm feeling so much dread about the possibility of the outcome. And I was like, you know what, so am I. And I know that you voted for the person that I didn't vote for. And is there anything in that, you know what I mean? Is there anything in that shared dread that we're both meeting in the middle with this sense of we expect the worst if our candidate doesn't win, even though we're on the opposite sides of the spectrum? And it's not the first time that an experience like that has happened to me in my very purple county. And the reason that I bring it up is because I think it's also something that speaks to perceptions of rural and urban divisions. I mean, when I go into cities where it's hey, do you know what it's like for people who own land but don't live in your neighborhood or in your community to make choices that affect the health of your soil and water? Hey, do you know what it's like to feel that your community is being divested from and resources are just leaking out? And it's of course you do. You know what I mean? These are not rural or urban issues. They are interconnected. And I feel if we can somehow meet there in the feelings, if we temporarily take off the specifics of the issue and we just actually go into the heart, what it feels like, that, I don't know, maybe there's power there. Maybe there's a potential to really meet in a civil and nuanced and way that is full of potential momentum forward, I hope. Otherwise, I don't have any answers, I think.
I just want to say that I have a lot of admiration for how you don't necessarily give off that you're overprotective, and this idea that that so much of what you would like to design has to be informed by relationship building. And I think that's something that we can really all learn from. I would say, like, in most cases in nonprofit, no shade to anyone, but you're more likely to work with someone that you would never work with outside of your organization when you work at like a larger nonprofit than not. And, you know, even in like more smaller scale, like project spaces, you know, in some ways those can feel hyper competitive because of how people are perceiving like access or dominance and how that will affect change in their personal careers and so forth. And I think so much of this artist organizer work is like deemed as advocacy work. But more often than not, us as artist organizers are actually advocating for ourselves. And the line between when we are trying to create point of access for ourselves versus other people like us can get blurred so often. And so I think there's so much value in a place that says like, well, here's the thing, we're dedicated to our community. We have an accountability or responsibility to each other because we are resource sharing. Also because like, if people didn't want to come outside, they really wouldn't have to and it'd be considered normal. So I really like this idea of like when I asked like, what are your future aspirations? Like what I heard was relationship building and that's it. Like that's where we're gonna start. And I think there's so much value in that because I think that even maybe at these like more high functioning, larger pay scale, I guess, maybe organizations, there's so much less consideration of that and who that directly impacts is the artists that we serve. So thank you.
We have about 10 minutes left. So in these last 10 minutes, I would really like to talk about, if y'all don't mind, about I don't know. I'd love to get into like the nitty gritty of how you make a drift happen because what drifts are based on, it's based on the original Midway and this idea of friendship and, you know, building these relationships with your colleagues and being like, hey, I got a friend in Detroit. They're having a show. Does anybody want to hop in the car with me and go up to Detroit? That's what these are, you know, centered around. That's what we're trying to do here. And in my experience, I didn't get to plan a big drift. I had to plan a little one. So the way that my like planning had to take shape was very different than what Julie had to do. So I would just like to speak a little bit to, I guess, who can plan a drift. Like, I was talking to someone earlier and they were like, that shit sounds hard. Like, how do you, how do you like, they were afraid of like introducing themselves to people. Like, how do you get over those kinds of barriers? And also, what does it mean for a drift to be like good or successful?
Yeah. So I think, Philip, I think your template helped a lot with my planning because you had like when you were planning the Northern Ohio drift, I kind of just copy and pasted that template and then yeah, that template. That was so good. So I was like, wow, this is so organized. And so I kind of adjusted my, copied your template and then like adjusted my drift schedule based on that. And well, I am the drift planner because I do a lot of program work and stuff like that. So help program a lot of events and stuff. So and I'm on the all the midway meetings. So that's why I was planning for this. And I think what was really important for me was that you know, to reach out to a lot of these orgs and make kind of like check what their schedules were when I was planning this drift, and then like also like talking with, you know, like the host org and making sure that I wasn't asking too much of them as well, which was really important. So I just asked for like you know, if they would host a dinner and we would pay a stipend for that. And then also like if they had any suggestions, and I kind of just went and did all more of the legwork myself for that. So I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't like a lot of pressure, a lot of work on the spaces that we were visiting, and also that we all were comfortable and had enough time to rest because we could have spent a lot of time driving, I'm sure, but I wanted to make sure we had time to rest and also like had a chance to also explore that city and things like that. And I don't know if you want to talk about your planning.
I just wanted to compliment Julie on her fantastic job of organizing the Southern Ohio Drift. So for those who may not have remembered, like we all flew in or drove to Big Car in Indianapolis, and that's where Julie is based. And then from there we went to Dayton and then Cincinnati and then briefly Covington, back to Cincinnati, back to Big Car, and then wherever we were supposed to go back home. But I would say like so much of artists engaging with other landscapes tends to like start with this like practice of resource hoarding, like, oh, I could get this residency in this place, or I could get a grant here if I go to this MFA program, you know, like so much of it is like us thinking about resource density and not necessarily about people. But one thing I would say that Julie did a really great job of was like we went to contemporary spaces. We asked them how they were funded. We also, you know, went to every kind of project space that was in the book there. There was storefronts, there were like warehouses, the wave pools in the, you know, firehouse. But, you know, just like really doing the research of like what is the ecosystem capacity of the place, I think is really important when you're planning like your own independent research and drifts, because like when you are taking resources from another landscape, you should be considering it as like, oh, I am sharing or cohabitating the praxis or like the proximity or the proxy of these resources with the people who actually live here. So I want to say Julie did an excellent job of that. So congrats to her. Yeah.
I think what I hear you say is that people feel like intimidated, right, to reach out to colleagues, which is, I don't know, I get it. But I think who wouldn't want to receive that message? Who wouldn't want to receive the email or the phone call being like, I think what you're doing is awesome. I would love to come and find out more about it. Like, what kind of availability do you have? Or, you know, can I bring you coffee on your break? You know what I mean? Like, finding some way, to Julie's point, of not asking too much, but also not feeling like you're approaching the ask with the assumption that it's automatically going to be no, you know. And yeah, I think that it is really important to ask the people who are already in the community, who should I be talking to? You know, every meeting that you go to, like, who else should I touch base with? Yeah.
I'll say that that was something that was like when we went on our drift to Cincinnati. Because I'll also say that like having unstructured time in a drift is like really important. Just time to be people with other people that you just met. Time where we're not explaining the whole history of our organization, where we're kind of just, we all decided we're going to leave here and go get gelato. And we're just going to like chop it up and get to know each other. But also making sure that there's time for like exploration. A few people that I've talked to about these drifts have, you know, we kept a record of where we went, but there were places that we discovered on our trips that we didn't even know were there. Again, just by talking to people and saying, hey, what else should I go see? Who else do you think is doing really awesome work? Yeah.
Okay, I think we can squeeze in one question from the audience. Yeah, come. You can come to the table, and then we will bid everyone adieu. Okay.
I just wanted to know how you find out about a drift happening, even too.
Yeah, so we publish our drifts on the website, but typically, how you find out about a drift would just be to like follow the Midway Instagram. Like we usually share when we're about to go on a drift, but after the fact, we usually like publish on our website that we had a chance to go. I would also say if you're here at this conference, meeting with the organizers and just like trying to, you know, cultivate interest, that would also be a good way because I don't know. I'll say like one of the things that I wish was different about drifts. I wish that they could be as long as like this conference was. Like I wish they could be a lot longer than what they are, but because of the logistics of a drift, you do have to like feed people. You do have to make sure people's schedules like align. It's just a little difficult to do. But the best way to do that would just be to kind of stay in touch with Midway or I really want to encourage people to plan their own drifts because I had a really good time planning mine. And um, leading your own drifts might be an even better way to, you know. Yeah. So at one point we talked about doing stipends for people who wanted to do drifts. If you get in touch with the Midway Network, we can help you organize a drift. But a lot of people don't know that that's a thing that we do. So, um, yeah. Also, we want to encourage people to join us on our drifts, and that might be on us as the Midway Network to make this more accessible for other people to create something maybe on the website where people can just see a long list of drifts and join us. Because, like I said, my partner joined us on a drift, and that was kind of what we were hoping for, like a little bit more external engagement, not just from like organizing partners.
Yeah, there is a Friday session for Future of Midway. Oh, but I was also going to say another thing that you can do. I mean, you could, outside of the capacity of Midway and your own ecosystems, I'm sure they're all different. But this is something that a drift could also be something that is like a practice-based grant, a project-based grant, but also too, like I think this is something that really kind of falls in those like municipal pools of like those hyper local grants, especially if you have like a travel cultural fund or initiative in your city, which most mid-sized cities do, especially because the Midwest is kind of the last to get the impact of the imperial globalism that is hyperdevelopment. Sorry, I didn't think I was going to get political, but yeah, I mean, there are a lot of like for those. I think getting in contact with the city oftentimes is like a great way to organize and like starting at even at a small scale. Like say if it's just a cultural covenanting or event inter-exchange from people just from a neighboring city, that can grow into actual substantial funding and really building a relationship with the city. So like I would look into any local travel cultural funds that are being like handed by the municipality or even by the state that you're doing. That would be another way. Yeah. Great. That is all of our time. Thank you so much to everyone. Yay.
Thank you.